right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sage Advice. Tonight, I have my most amazing, beautiful guest who is someone that I just care extremely dearly about. I consider a very good and close personal friend beyond just being a coworker and such. And that is Ela Darling. Hello.
Hello, my love.
I miss you.
I miss you too. Oh my gosh, I miss you so much.
Yeah, so this podcast, I like to keep it just pretty conversational, but I like to start out asking some questions about sort of like how you got here, but more going way, way back into the past. So, what was your first understanding of porn as far as like when did you realize that porn was a thing that existed in the world?
I think I have a story that is similar to an oddly large number of people. I think I came across some nudie mags in the woods.
Yes, I wasn't sure if we had talked about that before, but yes, there is the box of porn, of nudie mags, of old VHS tapes that, we've stumbled across in the woods. In my case, it was the desert. So yeah, why do you think it is so sort of like ubiquitous in all of our stories that we stumble across some pornography out in the wilderness somewhere?
Well, if you are someone who is new to acquiring pornography, you might want both a private place to utilize it for your own machinations and a place to store it because you don't want to take it home. So you don't want to be caught with it or using it or possessing it. So, you find a secret little spot in the woods. Yeah, it turns out the parts of woods where kids hang out, not that secret.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes too it might be the sort of thing where it's like buy some porn, but you can't have it at home because your significant other is very judgmental and not happy about pornography existing or their partner using it for pleasure. So you've got to hide it somewhere, hide your shameful pornography somewhere far away, which, I don't agree with, but. And also, I mean, look what happens. A couple of kids playing out in the woods are definitely going to stumble across it.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a thing that still happens in the age of, internet pornography.
I bet so.
Yeah.
Because I mean, oh man, I see it's a tricky subject because there's a certain age group that this tends to be like that first thing for, and I don't like speaking about that age group in conjunction with like
Mhm.
adult stuff, but
Right.
I don't know. I think when a younger person gets a smartphone, for example, their
Yeah.
parents have a lot of access to like block things on their phone or monitor their phone and stuff. So there's still, that classy old analog, that tasteful analog magazine porno, I think
That's
still
true.
has a place.
Yeah, and I hope it does, and I hope it continues to because, that's what I looked at when I was kind of blossoming into my sexuality. I found a couple of I didn't find these ones. I was older. I don't think I was quite 18. I was maybe like 17 or something, but I think I paid someone to buy it for me or something. It's hard to remember that long ago, but yeah, and I liked looking at the pictures,
Yeah.
even more so than when I came across video, and that was back when video was very hard to find on the internet in general. So,
Yeah.
but it was kind of the sexy part was sort of like letting my imagination make the movement happen in a sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I find the photos like really erotic. But yeah, and so I do understand not wanting to talk about that age group. It makes a lot of sense to me. But at the same time, too, I feel a little uncomfortable with not being able to talk about our own stories because of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, like with that in mind, your own story, we don't have to say, how old you are, but maybe more of just like what was that like for you? What was that feeling when you stumbled across that magazine? Was it, scandalous, exciting, scary?
It was scandalous. It was exciting. I don't really remember what exactly I thought at the time, but I remember the appeal was that there were these like grown ass beautiful women that looked just like you know, in the state of vulnerability, because being nude is a state of vulnerability, but looking so fucking fierce and confident and looking just like they are like on top of their shit. Like they look like badasses. They didn't even have to like dress up to look like badasses. They just like, it's like anti-dress up.
Yeah.
Whoa, it was cool.
Yeah, so it's like more the vibe that you could get. You can see it in their poses and their faces.
Yeah.
That was intriguing for you as a young, but you were like noticing how that it maybe even wasn't necessarily sexually stimulating. It was more like seeing that female ownership of oneself in that way.
Yeah, well, I was already attracted to girls at that point. I didn't really understand what that meant, but it was
Mhm.
definitely already, I had already had my heart broken by crushes
Aw.
through no one's fault but my own.
Yeah, of course. Oh, being young. So tough. But so before I would guess, was it around puberty that you were starting to recognize like, oh wait, this is like an actual this is a meaningful attraction, like in a sexual way, whereas before it was maybe more like I have these crushes, but I don't quite understand what that means necessarily, or
My crushes on girls were very similar in amplitude and in passion to the ones I had on boys. Like I was
Hmm,
absolutely in love with this boy named Daniel. I was absolutely head over heels for this girl named Angela,
yes.
and I
Oh,
didn't differentiate because I mean, they were the same to me in my mind.
so when you came up into like puberty and people were talking about like boyfriends, girlfriends, if you're gay, bi, straight, whatever, like that, it was just that wasn't like a revelatory moment for you. That was just like obviously.
Yeah, I never. I mean, ever since I had crushes on you know, just
Well,
people,
boys
not
and
necessarily
yeah.
genders. And yeah, I well, also up until I was maybe like early 20s, I was very uncomfortable talking about any kind of sex stuff at all. So I wasn't really
Ah.
having big conversations about that.
Okay, so did you feel that there was like, did you ever have like a coming out moment?
You know, a couple years, maybe 2 years into my adult film career, I was back in Texas for Christmas. My mom and I were out doing some shopping and stuff, and we stopped for coffee. And she asked me like if I'm bisexual, and I was like, yeah. And she asked me like why I never came out to her. And I just like, okay, well, what did my siblings say when they came out to you as straight?
Oh, I love that world. I wish we could all just live in that world. We will
Yeah,
someday.
I mean that was my perspective. Like I don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't impact anyone else. If you want to know, you can ask. But like I don't need to. I'm not going to make myself into some like weird other like, you know, species of child just because I don't know. It's another fucking. It's no one's business who I have sex with,
Right.
unless you're
No,
paying me.
of course, yeah. But I mean, that's a really amazing take to have for a young person, especially because because we are raised in a really heteronormative society, especially in the 90s. Well, I know you're like a little bit younger than me. Back then, especially, there was like a lot of emphasis put on just everyone. The default is straight, right?
Hmm.
And so if we're gonna decide if we're gonna want to, figure out who we are. And when we do have that moment, for a lot of us, it can be like, oh shit, like I am different than most people in this particular way. And so, it can feel like there has to be this coming out moment. But I think it's actually like really uh, s- an amazing thing that that you didn't feel that. You didn't feel that like pressed upon you in that way, and that sort of had to come out, that that was like a thing you had to do to someone.
Yeah, I know. I never really wanted to talk about any of that stuff with anyone until I started, you know, working in the adult space, which was a huge. I mean, just working in adult was a big step in terms of my personal growth and like being comfortable with my own sexuality, my body, like everything. Um,
Yeah.
it was really incredible.
So I do know that Okay, so now I have more questions. So yeah, so there are other ways of coming out, right? And especially for those of us who do engage in the industry, it's like, well, now we have to decide, are we going to come out about this to our family, our friends, our parents? I know that you've been pretty lucky in this fact that you have pretty cool parents. I
Yeah.
remember you saying that it wasn't that much of a struggle for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
So I had started modeling when I was 18, when I was still in undergrad. And I didn't do anything even slightly risque until I was 22 years old. I had just finished grad school. I was working as a reference librarian and the associate director of a library. And that's when I started doing kind of like the more risque, like kind of fetish clips. So not like full on porn, but fetish porn. And it
Yeah,
was
and
my,
was this was in Texas, right?
this was in Massachusetts. I was
Oh, Massachusetts, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was working just outside of Boston, and I answered a Craigslist ad, and
Oh,
yeah, I was fully clothed, but it was hardcore bondage, and I expected the worst, and it ended up being the coolest, best situation. Like this fetish producer treated me with more kindness and dignity than the fucking mayor of the town that I had to like deal with because I was the associate director. And
yeah.
it was just like, wow, I'm making more in an hour than I make in a day at a job I had to get a fucking master's degree to do. Fuck that noise.
Right?
So I moved out to LA to get married and do porn, and what I consider my first scene was for kink.com for fucking machines. And it was Amateur Girl Friday. So they brought out 3 girls and they flew us out in the morning, flew us back at night. I felt so cosmopolitan. This is my first porn thing where they're flying me out. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
There's
Yes.
makeup, there's wardrobe. Oh my. I was
Oh,
so
yeah. I remember having all those same feelings. Yeah, it's just like, "Oh, wow, look at they're treating me like a star."
exactly. I mean, shit, I was a librarian before that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm there at that first day on set at Kink. My parents called me when I was in the makeup chair, and so they knew I'd been modeling for a long time. And they were like, "Oh, what kind of photo shoot are you doing?" And it was just like, fuck, because they were going to find out eventually. I'm certain.
Yeah.
And I know that they'd rather I tell them a hard truth than lie to them.
Yes.
So I just told them, and they thought I was joking.
Wow.
But they were like, "Okay, well, are you safe? How do you know you're safe? Are you sure?" "Okay, are you gonna tell your husband or not?" I was like, "Yeah, he knows." And they're like, "Okay, well, be safe. Call us after." Like, okay, shit. Yeah, it was awkward, and they never made it my problem. If they had any problem with it,
Wow.
they never made it mine. They're really fucking good parents.
Yeah, that is such a blessing. Oh my gosh. If they had a problem with it, they never made it mine. That's
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, they're really fantastic.
Wow. Gosh, what a blessing. So we definitely jumped from being a librarian to doing a fetish shoot, and then straight into porn. So what was it? I mean, can you tell me what made you hop on Craigslist and look for and find that first gig? And yeah, what led you to that point, and what made you feel that even before you went to kink and did all that, like, I could do this bondage shoot, that can be for just a regular librarian, that could be quite a little scary or a little adventurous. So how did you get to that point?
So I got my master's degree when I was 21. I got my undergrad degree in 3 years, and I was taking at some points between like 18 and 21 credit hours, which is a fucking lot.
Wow.
Then grad school, I did it in a year, and I was working all the while and like during all of that. So then I finished grad school, and I got what was in that library system a full-time job as the associate director and head of reference and all these cool things that I was really really excited about.
Yeah.
But it was only 35 hours a week, and I couldn't even like while I'm waiting for my train to come, I couldn't just hang out and shelf books because the union forbade it. So I had
What?
all of this free time. I went from like taking all of the school and working a couple jobs to like, okay, 35 hours a week. And then what?
Yeah.
So I just started like, also, librarians aren't paid shit, like
Yeah.
shit, especially considering you have to have a degree. So I started looking for like paid photo shoots on Craigslist and just looking for like gigs and stuff. just
Mhm.
little side hustles. I did a little promotional modeling, a little bit of runway. That sucked. I hated that shit. That's such
Everyone I've
ass.
everyone I've talked to who has done that kind of modeling, like runway style stuff, is just like, this was the worst part of my life.
You will never meet a more miserable crowd of sons of bitches than backstage at a runway show. Like,
Yeah.
they're competitive and cutthroat. It's like, yo, we're all here right now. Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong? Like, y'all need to start having sex with each other.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I can say. I was just kind of browsing, but all through school, I would just look at different, like job listing or gig listing sites to find stuff like that. And so I came across this one that was like very adamant that it was not porn and it's not naked, and it's just like, this is exactly what it is. And so I hit him
Yeah.
up, and he's like, okay, you need a stage name, think of one. And so I sat out on the stoop of my little duplex, or I guess quadplex, is that a thing? My little, like, it was a really
Mhm.
old house that was 4 cute little apartments
Yeah. And this was in
in
Boston?
Boston. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm sitting out smoking a cigarette with my dog, and I'm like, that just came up with Ella Darling.
Just
So
out of your head.
yeah,
Just
I mean, it took some contemplation, but okay.
And that was before you went to the shoot.
Yeah, that was the night before he told me to come up with a name.
Awesome.
I
And
didn't know that
so,
was the thing.
yeah, yep, we've all had that moment, I think. Well, I had that same moment where I went to the shoot and he's like, "Hey, what do I call you?" And I was like, "Oh, I have to come up with something? I didn't even think of this." And now we're in just like such a different landscape. I mean, I feel like most people who are getting into porn now, it's because they've seen us on Twitter and they've seen us on TikTok and Instagram, and like they're well aware that we have, stage names. And I feel like now people are just a lot more educated when they get into the business than we were, back at that time, like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I think that the very sudden rise and thriving success of OnlyFans that brought
Yeah.
in so many people who were civilians who would never have even come near our industry,
Yep.
sort of found themselves in an amateur crash course in how
Yeah.
to do adult content. And man, I I wish the best for them.
Yeah.
I wish I'm glad it's given people opportunity. I'm glad it's given people, the opportunity to not just make money, but, get in tune with a certain side of themselves that they might not have otherwise.
Yes.
But I feel the same way about this new wave of civilian come adult creators as I
Mhm.
do about young people growing up on social media. In
Yeah.
that, like, I'm so glad that the early days when I didn't know shit about shit aren't documented on the internet for everyone to see.
Same. Well, some of
And
mine are, unfortunately, but yeah, I totally feel you.
yeah, and like, oh man, it only takes a few missteps to really, really ruin your life. And if you ever like spend time on the OnlyFans subreddits, like the creator subreddits,
Yeah.
you see people who are like just at their wits end. They like made $100 last month, and now they can't reach that again. And it's like, you took this huge leap that will absolutely have an impact on future job prospects,
Yeah.
possibly relationship prospects, possibly like every other fucking thing that we have to deal with for $100 in a month.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
God, my I
Yeah. Well, that's something like, when I have younger people, well, not necessarily always younger people, but usually contacting me at this point, and they're like, "Well, I'm interested to get into the industry, but I'm worried about blah, blah, blah. What is your advice?" And all I can say to them is like, "Man, you really, really, really need to know, because the consequences of this decision will have far reaching effects into your life, into your future for
Mhm.
the rest of it, really. So you have to make very sure that you are okay with any potential thing that could happen because of the fact that you've done this?"
Right.
And I think some people are going to look at that. They are going to take it all into consideration and they're going to do it anyway. And I'm like, then this is for you. This is the job for you. Know that? But like, I mean, it was definitely the thing for me, but
Mhm.
it's just that it is hard sometimes to recognize, like, you're sitting here now, especially if you're young and you got this whole future ahead of you, and you're like, no, no, this will be fine for now, and later I'll do something else. I remember hearing a porn star that I worked with one time, and she's doing all the things, and she's like, yes, after this I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to school, and I mean, she was doing all that right too, but I'm just like, these two things are not compatible. And I feel like it was a big thing when I was listening to this really amazing podcast. I would love for everyone to go and listen to it, by John Ronson, called The Butterfly Effect. Yeah, and so there's 7 episodes, and it was talking about the butterfly effect of basically like this guy who decided to start this thing called Pornhub, and like how it had these far-reaching effects down to, like autistic underage children in the middle of rural Oklahoma, and then all the way out to all of these people who make a living in this industry. And so anyway, it was talking about a performer who had worked for many, many years in the industry. He got his nursing degree, got hired as a nurse, exited the industry. And then when the higher ups found out that he had been involved in this industry at a previous time in his life, they had to fire him. And they said if one patient were to find out that you had done this or they recognized you, all it would take is one complaint, and they could sue the hospital, they could do blah, blah, blah. Even if the person was lying, it's just like, who are they going to believe? So
They could sue the hospital?
yeah,
That's insane.
because they could lie. They could lie and say, no, this nurse touched me in a way he wasn't supposed to. And look at him, he's a dirty porn star. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? So it's like, even though I think that it is, it's bias, it's stigma, and it's obviously wrong, but that's unfortunately how our society works. And so it's just little things like that. I mean, we have to take those things into consideration, and anyone getting on OnlyFans has to take that into consideration. But yeah, like I know a lot of people, or I know that there are people who do wear masks, and they think that's gonna, like a face cover mask where they don't show face on their OnlyFans. But but then those are the people who are gonna work, like hustle for a month and barely pull in $100, sometimes. So it's just the whole thing of social media in general, like trying to make a living off of it and thinking, oh, I'm gonna be a TikTok star or YouTube star, and it's like the chances of that happening are just as much as being a movie star. They're just so small. But anyways, so you did your first shoot, and you were it sounds like you were even a little pleasantly surprised by the way it went. Did you have any sort of preconceived notions of how it might go down? Like, what's your relationship with porn? What was it up to that point?
Which one in particular? The kink shoot or the fetish shoot?
Very first fetish shoot that you did on Craigslist.
Yeah. I thought the guy was going to be a creep. I thought he was going to like hug me a little too long and call me like pet names and just be like, I went in expecting to be uncomfortable and comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, because I wanted to see what this experience was like. Everything I might have anticipated was wrong, pleasantly.
Awesome. Yeah.
And yeah, it was the producer looked like a youth minister, except he was like an elder, like preppy looking dude who's like super, super goth on the inside.
Aw.
Like, yeah, like just really cool dude. Made me feel so comfortable. I ended up shooting with him several times. I've even flown back to shoot with him once or twice.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, it was awesome. And yeah, it completely bashed all my expectations.
So from there, you felt a little more emboldened to move forward with other opportunities. How did you come across your next opportunity?
Same thing. Just, I mean, from at that point, I just kept looking for interesting gigs on Craigslist or Model Mayhem, maybe. I don't remember. There were a few other resources. And yeah, I just kind of had this fun little side gig doing fetish shoots a few times a week. And, it was awesome. And so then I met the person who would eventually be my ex-husband. And he lived in LA. He lived in LA, and we had talked about, eventually, like, maybe I'll move out there. I was thinking, like, maybe like a year and a half. And then I was sitting in the subway one day and I was like, actually, fuck this. I'd rather just move to LA now. So I finished like 1 year in my job as a librarian, and then I moved to LA to get married and do porn. And maybe a little less than a week before I got married was that first kink shoot.
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask you, how you came across that. So you met your ex-husband,
Mhm.
and how long did you know him before you were like, fuck this, I'm just gonna go move in with him now?
I'd known him for about a little over a year,
Hmm.
but from like first time we kind of were like, oh my gosh, like we were hanging out, and anyway, it was
Yeah.
cute. It was romantic.
Yes. Oh no, oh my gosh, I'm really falling for you hard.
Yeah, about 3.5 months between that night, and our wedding day.
Oh my goodness. So you came to LA to get married. I don't know why in my head I imagined it was actually on the East Coast still, but
Mm-mm.
you came out this way,
Yeah.
the West way, and just moved right in, and then we're like, let's do this. We're getting married. And so it was before that then, that since you did your kink shoot right before you got married, you said?
Hmm. Hmm.
So you had already discussed with him, like, this is what I've been doing lately, and I really like it, and I want to try experimenting more with this. What was his
Yeah.
reaction to that?
Well, that first weekend we hung out, like we'd been friends and we hung out together. We went to New York for a thing, and then he came back to Boston, and he
Hmm.
did actually my first like nude photo shoot,
Oh,
like official one.
yes.
So like he was fully
Yeah.
there. And we talked about it. We were grown ups sometimes, so communicated and we discussed it and we established boundaries and respected those boundaries, and
Yeah.
just the way that you do things in a relationship.
Yes, absolutely. So it was always the boundary for y'all's relationship was that it was okay for you to do girl girl,
Yeah.
and he had no issues with that.
Mm-mm.
And so he didn't, it seems that, he didn't have like a jealousy with you. That wasn't even a thing, huh? I mean, as far as your work at that
No,
time.
no, he was. It was all thoroughly discussed before anything moved forward. That was not something I was gonna. I just don't like keeping secrets from people. I don't like lying to people,
Absolutely.
especially the people I'm closest with, because I mean, other than the obvious, like just having personal convictions, I just
Yeah.
don't want to try to keep up with a lie with someone. Like it's
Yes.
just like
It's
it seems like such a hassle.
so much work. How do you
Yeah.
keep it all together? I don't understand that either.
I don't have fucking. I have ADHD, man. I can't fucking do that shit. I'm not.
Right?
Um,
It's better to just be upfront, you know?
exactly. Like, let's not waste our time if this is gonna just be a shit show.
Exactly. But you were still like a little bit younger. I mean, I know in my early 20s I was not as well put together, I'll say. And yeah, but I think you always were pretty insightful
Hmm.
person. You've had an advantage getting into this industry too. So then how did the first shoot with Kink happen? Did you see like a casting call? Did you get an agent when you came to LA? Like how did that all start working out?
I didn't get an agent until years later, until the time I started doing boy girl after my divorce. Um, no, once again, Craigslist. Like back when Craigslist had an adult gig section, it
Yeah.
was fucking lit. Like I got so much work from that. I mean, who needs a fucking agent? Fuck that
That's
shit.
so now more than ever, who needs a fucking agent? I hate
Oh my
them.
god.
They're
Yeah.
awful and they're garbage. Um,
Yeah.
but so kink.com had posted a thing on Craigslist?
Yeah. They wanted amateur people.
Wow. Oh, I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to talk to us a little bit about your second shoot at Kink.
I was blown away. I was truly gifted. I was truly touched by the gods on that day of days. For listener, I got to be cast alongside none other than Sinn Sage herself. It was what Haight Ashbury hippie
Yes.
kidnapping scene where
Oh,
I'm this little hippie girl and I wake up in a like a human sized Barbie box, and you kidnap me to be your little pet or something.
yes.
Yeah.
And you were in that box and you were tied in a very uncomfortable position, and we couldn't have any air down there, and I just remember watching like the beads of sweat falling down your
Pouring.
face
I
and
was
being like,
pouring sweat. It was so fucking hot. It was so uncomfortable. And like, this is early on in my porn career. I'm like, you know, I could still at that point probably count the number of people I'd had sex with on one hand or two hands. Two hands, let's be real.
yeah, no, definitely.
But like, so I'm like, oh my God, I'm like a disgusting sweaty mess. And I'm this beautiful stranger supposed to have sex with me. Wow. Not your lucky day, lady.
No, whatever. It was so my lucky day. I got to meet you, and I feel like we became friends really fast.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We definitely vibed. So that was the day that I learned about makeup sponges.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Do you want to
I
tell our
so
listeners about makeup sponges?
so I got to the Armory, you know, they flew me in from LA, picked me up. It's probably like from the time I left my house until this moment when I'm like in makeup or something, or maybe before, I don't know. Um, I'm a solid 3.5 hours into my day. So I'm at the Armory. I go to the bathroom and I realize that I was on my period. Like it just started and I was mortified. Mortified. And so I go to the office and I tell them, like, hey, so I just started my period. And they were like, oh, okay, there's makeup sponges in the bathroom. Dude, are there any out? I was like, oh, okay. That means fuck all to
You're like,
me.
what do I do with the makeup sponge? I don't understand what you're saying.
It's like, maybe they didn't understand what I said and I'm not going to repeat myself. So I'm just going to leave.
Oh my
And I
God.
don't remember who it was that explained it to me. Fuck, it might have been you, girl. But
Possible. Definitely
yeah.
possible.
So the thing is, when that happens, you just roll up a little makeup sponge wedge and pop it right up there, and it creates a nice little spongy seal, and no one's the wiser.
No one's the wiser. And they do this
But
with the boy-girl shoots as well. And
yeah,
it's just, I guess the dude's dick is just going to be bumping up against that makeup sponge sometimes, but it's going to keep it looking like you're not on your period. So
exactly. Keep you out of what is it? Prison for obscenity? Jail?
yeah.
Yeah. Keep you out of obscenity court.
Yeah, now
Um,
they just won't even put it on the site.
the thing is, you know, with other paraphernalia designed
Mhm.
for such regions, there's sort of an escape hatch, you know, like you just pull a string and it's like, oh, okay, now that's gone. My body is no longer harboring that.
Yes.
Yet no
Yes.
such device on a makeup sponge.
Nope.
And I could not get it out. And we were at the airport. You crawled under the stall. I just like, doop, doop, like, bam, bam, like, here you go, like fucking jaws of life over here. Just like, got it.
I was just like, I got you, girl. Like, don't
Yeah.
worry. And the truth about the sponge is it is a lot more difficult for the person with the sponge in to reach their fingers up and have that grip capacity to pull it out again. So if you have a partner, it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah. I had known you for 6 hours at this point. 6 hours.
It's true, but I've always been this person where, especially when it comes to doing scenes with another person or doing sex work, it's just like, this is another person's body. I'm sure they're not really stoked about what's going on right now with their own body. And I am just like, to me, this is no big deal at all. So I will always take an opportunity to help and be like, and just so you know, this is totally fine with me. This is just like occupational hazard. I've got shit on my dick before. I've got blood on my dick. I've got blood on my fingers. Like, it's just not it's just part of the job. And it's not even a part that bothers me very much. It's just like, okay, clean it up and we move on with what we're doing. Like,
Yeah, yeah. We've got a schedule here. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like you hadn't already had your fingers inside of me a few times before then in that
right.
previous 6 hours. So,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
definitely. So I wonder about that shoot. Do you remember? What was so awesome is that I couldn't even tell that that was like, it was kind of like your first pro girl like sex scene, and I
I
didn't
think so.
even know that at the time. But did such a great job. You were so
Mhm.
enthusiastic with everything, and I definitely encourage people to go find that. The site was called whipdass for kink.com, and you can definitely do a search for Ella Darling and Sinn Sage and find that scene, and I encourage you to watch it. It was very,
It was a good
very
one.
fun and cool, yeah. But I remember you were just you were so open to trying anything. And I'm not sure how much anal type of sex you had in your personal life at that point, but I remember that the director brought out this anal hook with it had a big ball at the end, and she was like, "Do you think that we could put this in your butt?" And you were just like, "I don't know, but let's try." Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Can you describe that?
You know, when you go to a buffet and you just everything looks pretty good, and so you just try a little bit of everything, and by the time you sit down and eat, it's like there was no way in hell as all of this was going to fit inside of my body.
Wow, that is such an awesome metaphor.
I gave it the old college try, but I hadn't really had much. I really hadn't had much in my butt at all by
Yeah.
then, and so
Yeah.
I tried, and it was just not happening, and I felt so bad.
Oh
But like
no.
in retrospect, I don't even think I could fit that thing in my ass now, and it's not like I'm getting anal blasted all the time, but I keep
Yeah.
I try to keep active.
Right. Right. Yeah, there was something about the shape of it that it was like literally just this big ball at the end
Yeah,
of the hook, and it would
yeah,
be different if it was kind of tapered or
hmm
something, but it
yeah.
wasn't. It was just like you're gonna take this hole right in there, and and it's kind of a big piece. And yeah, I just that is something, butt stuff is like, it takes a minute. You got to work stuff in. And that's even for people who do it all the time. I mean, there are those anomalies, and most of them do work in porn, where they're just like, just throw something in there. It's all good. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but for most people, it takes a little warming up. It takes a little like tapering. And even I was like, that's a huge ask. Director. Yeah, but that was what was so cool, is that you were just so down to try anything. Do you feel like that's part of why you maybe got in the industry? I mean, you have, obviously there's like monetary reasons, but was it also like, I want to explore this side of myself. I want to learn more about my own sexuality, things of that nature?
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with splitting off into a new identity because Ella Darling does not have the years of, you know, shame or embarrassment or timidness or whatever. Ella Darling's someone the fuck else. And so I felt a lot more comfortable. Like I mentioned, I just never really like even talking about sex stuff.
Yeah.
Not Ella Darling.
Ella
So it
Darling
was,
can talk. Ella Darling gets
yeah,
down.
yeah. So it was like stepping into this persona that had confidence in areas that I lacked and enthusiasm about things that I would have felt like self-conscious to be enthusiastic about. And it was like, fuck it, that's Ella Darling. Who cares?
Right. So you could like compartmentalize it in that way.
Yes, precisely.
And so I saw you just had your porniversary not too long ago. How many years?
13 years.
13. So I'm curious, like in those 13 years, what has changed between the two personas? Have they had sort of a merging, or like how would you describe it now compared to when you first started?
Definitely a merging of personalities. I think they've both sort of built into each other and built onto each other and, grown as a result. There is still some differentiation. Like, very few people call me anything but Ella.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm hanging out with my friends, they call me Ella. And it's just the thing that they call me. But when I'm stepping into the shoes of Ella, there's still like, I think when I am in like acting in that persona, I'm a lot more willing to stand up and enforce boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, a lot more willing to just not call someone out, but be direct and not like allow myself to kind of be like intruded upon, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Well, I think that just really highlights some of the ways in which this work can be really not only empowering, but therapeutic in a sense. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I think about like my early 20s and jumping into work at the strip club. And I think about ways that my boundaries were sort of, I don't know if ephemeral is the right word. They were a little more wavy. They were a little more loose. They were a little
Mhm.
easier to push against. And how, as the years have gone by, and as I have worked in this business, that my ability to set and enforce my boundaries in those ways has just gotten so much stronger. I think that's something that informs those of us who start young and continue on for quite some time.
Mhm.
After you left your marriage, you decided to start trying boy girl. And I'm curious, like, what led to that decision? I feel like I remember you being excited, and I can understand why in the beginning. And I'm curious, like, how that shifted for you, and if you don't mind talking a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I was excited about it because it was something new,
Yes.
and especially at that point, I've never been like a famous porn star, so it was just kind of like
Whatever.
it was new opportunity for work. Because I was living with another adult performer at the time. I didn't have a safety net of having a partner that, we shared a bank account. So if I had a bad
Right.
month, whatever. So part of
Yeah.
it was financial. A large part of it was financial. Part of it was just, excited for something new, excited to kind of like, stretch the wings of my brand a little bit,
Yeah.
kind of lean into my career.
Mhm.
And yeah, I liked it for a little while. And then, turns out I'm just not that fucking straight. It was fine, and then I was just like, I just don't want to fucking do this. Like, just not. There was nothing traumatic or bad about it, really. It was just
Mhm.
like I just rather not, you know.
Yeah.
Which is lucky because right around then is when the VR company that my co-founder and I had started was in a position to sign like a 2-year license deal. So I was luckily in a place where I could finally kind of exuent from boy girl porn, at least, typical studio porn.
Right, right. Yeah, and, I had a similar kind of experience, and it was almost not even at that different of a time from you. I feel like we were going through some of the same things. So my long-term relationship ended, and I was like, here is this opportunity I could take. If I wanted to now, I could do boy girl if I wanted to. But I was like, I'm gonna wait on this. I'm gonna contemplate it for a while before I just jump in. But I'm glad that I didn't end up going that route, because I do think, you're right when you say, like, I'm just not that fucking straight. It's like I just, I obviously I feel similarly. And I think that there's a big difference when you are on a girl set, even if there are men on set, like doing lights or camera or any of those other things. It's a totally different kind of male energy on a boy girl set, and it can be a little overpowering, a little overwhelming. And I yeah, I can see why that would be limited. Like you'd get tired of that.
Yeah, I think in a girl girl shoot, there's a sense of sort of just equality and equity because you're both,
Yeah.
women doing porn in a scene together. Um, Not that we're all just fungible, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's a girl girl and that they're weighted equally for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus with a boy girl, it's this sort of weird wishy washy where does the guy matter that much? Because if he's someone that has a large following, then yes. But a lot of the time, it's they're not watching to because they're a big fan of the male porn star. They want to see their
Mhm.
particular girl get fucked, and they like
Yes.
to see an interesting new dick doing it. They don't really care who the dick is attached to, simply
Yep.
as long as it's entering and exiting.
Yes.
And so there's that, and that like that sort of skews towards the women sort of being a little bit more prestigious, I guess, on set. That's a weird way to put it, but
No, I know what you
then
mean.
there's also like, okay, but you're getting fucked. So like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't feel the same sense of sort of like equal like when I'm just
Respect.
respect or even just just it's harder to connect with a lot
Yeah.
of male performers. It's easier for me to connect with a female performer that I have pretty much nothing in common with than a male performer who I have a decent amount in common with.
Yeah, totally, totally get that. I hate to say it, but it feels a little sisterhoody maybe with
Yeah.
women performers.
Yeah.
And that includes trans women performers.
Yes,
Just
of
want to
course.
make that clear. But yeah, at least coming from, someone like us, who that's just sort of been our main jam, our main bread and butter. So I want to talk a little bit about your activism in the sex industry, because, when you said something about I've never been that much big of a porn star or something, and I'm like, whatever. You not only just with the activism, but I mean, you're always there on the red carpet at AVN, you're interviewing people. Like, I feel like you could have had, I'm not sure if you did, a nomination for like a crossover star or whatever. Like, you definitely made yourself a little media butterfly. I don't know what else to call it. Over the years. And I think you've been like pretty prominent. I mean, you're featured all the time in like articles that are not just about porn. They're about like sort of our struggles for equality and those sorts of things. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear you like talk a little bit about that.
I got involved in the sort of activism side of the adult industry pretty early on. As soon as I learned that the FSC was a thing and that there was an opportunity to stand up for the rights of a community, I was fucking there.
Yes.
And so that was probably within my first year and a half of being a performer.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
I kind of stuck with it here and there. I was the president or vice president of Amnesty International in high school, and librarians are basically like fucking punk rock activists advocating for your intellectual freedom and right to consume media
Yes.
without government interference. Around 2014-ish, I think, around that time, we were dealing with AIDS Healthcare Foundation pulling some novel fuckery that they always do. They always try to legislate away our safety and our voice because they think they know what's best for us, even though they have literally nothing to do with the porn industry. And I don't know why the fuck they run their mouths at all in the first place.
Yeah.
But it was around something like that. I don't remember if it was Prop 8 or it's been a while. There's been so much.
No. Well, Prop 8 was
that's the different
Californians
one.
got to vote on whether or not gay people should be allowed to be
That's
married.
right.
But it was a proposition, Prop 60.
Prop 60, goddamn, that's right.
Yeah. And so they did pass there was like a measure that was just for LA City or LA County.
Mm-hmm.
And that unfortunately passed, I guess, and it has to do with condoms.
Yeah.
And I think, like, anytime somebody wants to quote unquote advocate on our behalf without listening to us or talking to us, that is always something that people need to be really aware of and really wary of, because it's just like the owner of AIDS Healthcare Foundation, the head of it, his name was Michael Weinstein, and he got it in his head for some fucking reason, with all of the millions of dollars that they take in as donations for people who are thinking, oh, I would like to donate to AIDS healthcare to help people who need AIDS medicine. Maybe they're doing outreach in other countries that are poor. When I hear AIDS Healthcare Foundation, those are the things that I think of. They're helping people in need. And instead, they took those donations and that money and they waged a war, a campaign against pornography. And they just really had no idea what they were talking about. They wanted to do something similar to what like Texas has done with the abortion. Like, they wanted to do where, like, oh, if you see a porn with somebody not wearing a condom in the scene, well, you can sue or something like that.
It was basically it created a cottage industry of people anybody in the state of California who had reason to believe that a porn video they were watching that did not utilize a condom was shot in the state of California within the time frame of that law having gone into effect. They could sue the production. The letter of the law was written such that it excluded performers. So performers would be safe from it if you don't know shit about porn, because performers don't just show up, perform, and go home. We do our makeup. We do each other's makeup. We do lighting. We run camera. We edit. We are our own production studios.
We produce our own porn.
Yeah.
I'm performer and producer. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're only shooting so many times a month. I mean, some people are shooting all the fucking time, and
Sure.
good for them. But
But
I'd
many of
say,
us are not.
yeah, most of us we have a few, maybe a few shoots a week, a few a month, depending on,
Hmm.
it's always feast or famine. So in
Yeah.
your downtime, what are you gonna do? Sit around and twiddle your thumbs and hope someone casts you so you can pay your fucking rent? No,
Right.
you get your ass on your camera, on your phone, get on Premiere. You're pumping out content.
Yep.
So we wouldn't have been protected in any case.
Nope.
And had that, actually come to fruition, basically any information that came out, like your legal name, your home address, any personal information would become a matter of public record,
Yep.
which puts us at dire risk of assault, murder, rape, fucking just having a
All.
fucking weirdo show up at your door because they think you're best friends because they watch your porn or they sub your OnlyFans.
Yep. All of the horrible things, they would have just thrown us under the bus like that. And, and it feels, I know you and some other people actually like went up to Sacramento and we're
Oh
talking,
yeah,
and
several times.
I know that might be separate. That might be like the OSHA stuff, but I feel
Yeah,
like
that was the just.
it was AHF that was really pushing for all of this. Like if they would have just left us alone, none of this would have happened in the first place.
It all bleeds together in my mind, but yes, it was all just a large domino effect of, and they were involved the whole time.
Yeah.
They definitely fuck themselves. But
Yeah.
yeah, I spoke to several people in the Capitol building. I think some Congress people, media. I had media training, um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, I just anytime they needed a voice from a performer to speak, because I'm fairly articulate, and
Yes.
as far as audiences go, I'm pretty palatable in terms of like they want to hear from an adult film performer. What do they think we look like and sound like, and all that shit. And I'm a fucking nerd with a master's degree, and it's gross that it has to be like that. But to get
Yeah.
people to sort of see us as humans,
Yes.
we wanted someone. I mean, I was good. I was good and I was available, but I think it made it so people kind of like realize that whatever their assumptions of us are, maybe aren't completely accurate.
Yes. And that is a really awesome point, that you were really like you were a good spokesperson for a lot of different reasons. And you're right, it is fucking gross. But at the same time, it is nice to see, it's nice to know that we can crack minds open in that way. That's kind of what I think. It's like that's how we can get to the progress that we're hoping for, is by putting people like you in front of a camera and being like, listen to her speak, listen to what she's saying, and yes, this is a porn star. What, you weren't expecting this? Like
Yeah.
maybe it's not like how you think it is in your head. And I know that, like with my mom, for example, she had a picture in her head of what porn meant. And over the years of me being involved in the sex industry and talking about my experiences and having experiences like when I was in the hospital, and all of my coworkers, but directors I worked with, friends in the industry, they were all calling my mom and asking about how I was and showing like real legitimate concern and like donating to my hospital bills. And that's when it cracked her mind open, and she's like, oh, I guess it's not how I always thought it was, and this is a community of people who support each other. And so I do think that's like how we can start to, yeah, like subvert those expectations in these ways and like hopefully be seen as human. I feel like we're
Yeah.
on the way, and I feel like always a double-edged sword. Everything always is. OnlyFans is something that kind of brought it into people's living rooms.
Yeah.
So yeah, so AHF bad, AIDS Healthcare Foundation bad, and if any listeners want to support AIDS Foundation research and stuff like that, I highly recommend you check out the Freddie Mercury Trust. That is going to be a much better place to make donations to and support actually getting people the help they need, rather than political motivations for whatever stupidity that I don't understand.
There is so much tomfuckery going on that if I spelled it out, I would sound like a lunatic conspiracy theorist.
And yet,
And yet, scoundrel's gonna scoundrel, you know?
yeah, there's always some wild shit going on. That is for sure. And especially when it comes to sex work of any kind.
Mhm.
But I do know that it has been it's been just such a pleasure, having you as sort of like a spokesperson, and I've always admired that so much about you, and I've been so happy to know that you have been a face for this industry, and I think that's incredibly meaningful, and I'm just really proud of you.
Hmm, I love you.
Well, I love you too.
Oh, man.
So I would also love for you to help me answer a couple of questions we have from some listeners.
Lay it on me, baby.
So our first one comes from Big E. And Big E asks, I am in a new situationship. Ooh, I love that. That's a new term for me. With someone I have been crushing over for a while now. I do have feelings for him, but I'm not looking for anything serious. My biggest thing is that we're simply having oral sex right now. And he is talking about having full on sex, but I'm worried. The way he likes oral is so odd. There isn't a good rhythm, and it's rough. Yesterday, my throat was tender. I don't mind a little rough oral, but his throws me off. I guess I'm worried that the way he likes oral is the way he fucks. I have been celibate unintentionally for nearly 2 years, and I don't want to break my celibacy on some whack dick. Is the way he likes oral indicative of how his sex will be?
There's a lot there.
Yes.
Okay, I gotta say, I hate a situationship.
What does it even mean?
It's like,
Lay it out.
okay, it's like you're talking to someone, and the big question mark is, what the fuck are we? Like, what are we? What is this? What are we doing? Like, I don't care what it is. Just give me clarity so I know how to operate. Give me some schematics here so I know, like, the gist of where are we? What are we? What is this?
Like, are
And
we
it's
just
just,
fucking? Are we just going out to dinner? Like,
yeah, are you fucking other people? Should I be? Is that it? Like,
right.
and it's just like, it's too early. Like, when you start asking questions like that, it's just like, oh shit, now there's like pressure.
Yeah, it
But
changes it.
yeah, but it's also like, okay, well, I can't live in this, purgatory of a relationship without some understanding. Like, just give me a context. Give me
Yeah.
anything. Because I just, it's fine. Whatever it is, just fucking help me understand. So I
Yeah.
hate a situationship, but I hope it's right for you, dear listener. What do you think, Sin, about does the oral match the
Yeah, so yeah, I got feelings. I got thoughts. I do think that, in this particular scenario, I would have a conversation way before I was like, let's get the dick in there. In the holes.
yeah.
The other holes, the non-mouth holes. So firstly, the fact that, the way he basically, it sounds to me like he had rough sex with your mouth. Um, and I know that, like, that's something that I really enjoy. I love getting my face fucked, but that's with my partner that I've been with for a very long time. That was in the first time that we did some oral, that was not how it went down.
That would be jumping the gun for me.
Exactly, exactly. I think that the first times that you are intimate with someone, it should be like the default setting should be vanilla, pretty vanilla, in my opinion. And then you have conversations about what you like as you decide to keep engaging. And then you can talk about how often do you like it to be rough? What works for you? I feel like a sore throat the next day is extremely sexy if that was something that turned you on. If that was something that made you feel awkward and weird, and it's not really something you enjoy, then I'm so sorry, but you have to use your words. There's no other way to get this out to that person.
Yeah, I have. So, in my sex life, which is very communicative, like, just straight up ask, like, hey, can I do this?
Yeah,
It's not a big extravaganza. It's just a,
yeah,
hey, is it cool if I do this? Like, fuck yeah, I love that. Or
yeah.
like, not right now, but how about this instead? It's just like staying on the
Yes.
same page, keeping it going. Like, there's a fork in the road. Either it's going to be fun. Which one is going to be more fun for you right now in this moment? And
Yeah,
I love having my face fucked. I love having my throat fucked. Oh, fuck, I love that shit.
Right.
But I have a limit, and it varies based on how I'm feeling that day, what I've eaten recently, any
Oh,
number of
yeah.
things. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
there comes a point where it's like, okay, I need to step it back unless you want me to puke on your dick, which I don't want to because I'd like to get
Rather
my pussy
not.
soon.
Exactly.
And that's not my preferred lube.
Oh,
So,
same.
so like whenever it's happening, I just kind of, just kind of establish. I'll do a little like tap tap on the head, like tap tap, like okay, like step it back, and then the balls in my court or mouth. Um, and so when when I kind of catch my breath and I'm ready to go back in, then I'll just start fucking my throat with a stick, and that's
Yeah,
a pretty good
almost.
sign that I'm ready to try again.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah, and I think that's a great way to do it too. Set up these little beforehand, hopefully you have the conversation about when and how you are down for a rough throat fuck. And then you can say, like, you set up these communication modes so you don't have to like talk about it while you're doing the act. So you can say, yeah, I like it, do it. And then, but if I tap you, that means like back off a little bit and then wait for me to sort of re-engage. And then you can go at it again in the rough style. So that's like great advice for being able to communicate like while it's happening. But I do think that, if he just sort of started rough sexing your throat without really talking to you about it or asking how you like to give head, then I think there is a way. Uh, uh, s- you could have a slight expectation that he might treat your entire body the same way, where that he might, just default to rough. When again, I personally believe the default should be vanilla, and then you work your way up to rough, and that can be second time, third time, even. But I don't think that, and I do think that this is unfortunately one of the negative effects of porn on the male population is that they see a lot of rough sex in porn, and they think this is how we're supposed to have sex with uh, women or with our partners,
Yeah.
that this is what they all want without taking the time and the space to ask if they like it like that.
Right.
So my advice wouldn't be just drop that dick and move on. My advice would be like, now you are clearly at a point in your situationship where you need to have a discussion about the sex that you're having and that you want to have. And so that's one side of the answer. Definitely, you have to talk. So I know it's hard, but you're gonna have to say, listen, I like rough sex. I like you giving me rough head, but sometimes it's a little too much. Can we scale it back from time to time? I can let you know when I want you to fuck my face and when I would rather just like give you some oral. Um, and when I talk about wanting to have sex with you, I would like it to not just be rough right off the bat. There's that. But on the other side of things, too, I also don't want you to look at your celibacy as though it's a second round of virginity. You say you don't want to throw away your celibacy, which you said is also not by choice, on some whack dick. I feel like when we were growing up, I can't say if you're a cis female or what your gender is, but I know as a female person growing up, I was told, oh, your virginity, it's this precious fucking gift. And like, you don't want to just throw it away on whatever. I purposefully threw it away on someone because fuck that shit. At the
Yeah.
time, I was really like, could I just get this out of the way, please? And even looking back, it's like, that no, your virginity was not a special gift, and your celibacy isn't either. It'd be different if you were doing this for a personal decision, a personal choice that you're making, but it just sounds like that it's time for you to just get laid and just know, out in the world, like you're gonna have a lot of experiences that are not that crazy good. And
Most dick is whack.
yeah, most
Okay,
dick is
like
whack.
you find you've it's all a little shabby chic. They're fixer uppers. You find the things you like about it, you lean into it, and you make that be the primary thing that you focus on. Like
Yes.
there is no pristine perfect dick in the world. You
Nope.
learn to like the person who possesses said dick, and that makes the dick even better.
Yeah.
Um, for the roughness, I don't know how long they've been going together, doing whatever. So I
Yeah,
don't know
they
if
don't
this was
say.
like right off the bat, but just talk about it. I mean, be sexy about it. Just say, hey, I really want to have
Yeah.
sex with you sometime, but here's what's up. It's been a while,
Yes.
so I need you to be gentle. And if I like tap your back and I say gentle, that means you pump the brakes and we go nice and slow. And if
Mm-hmm.
nobody comes, then nobody comes. But at least we had this beautiful intimate thing together. If everybody
Yes.
comes, yeah. Um, I was, I don't know, what was the time period? It doesn't really matter. I went through a period where I didn't have sex for me, a sex worker, a very long time, like fuck, 8 or 9 months, and it wasn't that I felt like I had regained my virginity or anything like that, but I kind of relate to like, I don't want to just go hook up with some random guy. Like I,
Totally.
I've been fine this long. I don't need to, you know, the the chance of success, the chance of that, of me leaving that situation feeling like, fuck yeah, that was awesome. I had a great time. And that person is someone that I would like to spend more time with casually as a friend or bouncing on their genitals. One or the other or both. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
But man, when I finally got laid, it was like, oh, yeah, this kicks ass. And what was I doing? I mean, I was, observing health and safety during a pandemic at the time. So that was my excuse.
Yeah,
But
there's that.
yeah, I was just like, oh shit, no, being slick kicks ass. Why have
Yeah.
I? This is awesome. Why was I such a? Why was I? Why was I so princessy about this? So precious about this? Like,
Yes, so
I like
fresh.
getting dick down. Sex is awesome, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like Sinn said, the fact that you haven't had sex in a while, like, man, I haven't had pasta in a really long time. But like, I'd fuck up some like Olive Garden if I really had to, if I was having the craving.
Yep.
It's not good pasta, but
No.
it'll get the job done. And
Yeah.
then it'll maybe spark a little bit of inspiration for better pasta I'd like to try in the near future.
Exactly. I love that. Great analogy. And yeah, I think that's some pretty good advice. So hopefully Big E will take all that into consideration.
Get it, Biggie.
Get it. One more question. All right, this one is from Jay. I had the greatest experience of my sexual life. I was in a bi three-way and I was really hesitant to participate and I was really nervous because it was my first time. But once I got into it, it was exciting and fun, and we set another date for another hookup. We did everything very safely. But one problem I have is that I feel very guilty about it as well. Like I did something that was wrong, and my family would completely disown me if they ever found out about it. What do I do about it? Oh
Um,
man, completely change the paradigm of the way you think about yourself in relation to the world. Can you do that?
um, if your family's not present during the sex you're having, then their opinion on your sex life doesn't matter. If they are present, then their opinion really doesn't matter, and you need to call somebody.
Yeah, right? Yeah, if they are present, then, I think you got more bigger problems.
Yeah, yeah. Who gives a shit? Like, let's remove sex from the equation. Think about anything you do day to day, week to week, every little thing. Like, you don't want that broadcast to the people you care. Like, we're all fucking gross weirdos. Like, I'm sure you can think of plenty of things without me supplementing them in your mind that you just keep those moments private to yourself because they're your private time. They're not for anybody
Mhm.
else to consume or analyze or have a fucking opinion on because it's your private time. That's how
Yep.
sex is. It's just your private time with a couple of other people who are also part of the private time. I don't feel bad about it. You're having a good time. They're having a good time. Where, at what point does guilt enter into this? Because it sounds like a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, a cozy handful of people had a great time together and feel good about it. So good that they are already making plans for the next. Show me the problem.
Yeah, show me the problem. It's a really good way of putting it. I think that, if I was gonna read into this a little bit, where I find most guilt and shame that in our adult lives tends to revolve around sex and sexuality. And I am 99% certain that that came from some religious upbringing that was indoctrinated into your brain, your malleable brain that is capable of changing in a beautiful, amazing plethora of ways. But when you grow up with these ideas that these are bad things and shameful things that you should feel guilty about, it pervades into your adult life long past the time that you should be feeling guilty about these things. And so, definitely recommendation would be just, remember that you are an adult, and remember that you have a very finite amount of time to be alive on this planet, interacting with other human beings, feeling pleasure, experiencing pleasure. It could end tomorrow, it could end in 10 years, it could end in 50 years, but there is going to be an end. And do you want to let shame and guilt hold you back from having meaningful, pleasurable experiences in your life before you die? How much control are you going to hand over to those feelings of guilt and shame? And what's that worth to you? Is that worth just not doing the things that you want to experience, not having the experiences that you want to have? There's so much pain and heartache and trouble in our lives that why would you not want to do something that made you feel joy, that made you feel pleasure, and let yourself feel that joy and pleasure? I also just recommend that, like, when that voice comes into your head and says to you, this was a bad thing you did, try to notice that. Try to recognize that happening in your brain, because that is your brain, that is the indoctrination from this society that told you that this stuff was shameful, sabotaging you. And you have a voice in your own brain that's stronger than that. So notice that other voice and tell it to shut the fuck up. Tell it, this is my life to live and this is all the time I get. And I'm going to enjoy it. I think that's one of the most empowering things you can do as a person, is just not let these narratives of shame and guilt hold you back from experiencing joy in your life. And I feel so passionately about that.
That was poetry right there. That was some fucking poetry,
Poetry,
baby girl.
hell yeah. So two sides of the same coin. One side is that your family does not need to know about this, will not ever find out about this. It is none of their business. And the other side being, do not let this shit control your finite amount of time that you have to experience pleasure and joy on this planet, because it's hard to come by sometimes. So you need to fucking embrace it when you have the opportunity.
Absolutely. Whenever you feel that sense of that little whisper of guilt that says this thing you're doing is bad, just ask yourself, says fucking who?
Says fucking who? For real.
Yeah. Who the hell do they think they are?
Who you trying to impress?
Exactly.
They can suck it.
Probably would feel better if they did.
They would. So I hope that was good advice for you, Jay. And thank you so much for writing in with a question. Everyone, please write in with your questions. You can send your questions about sex, relationships, and I know you've got questions about porn and how the industry works and how it's made and things like that. You can ask us that stuff too, to Sinn Sage podcast at gmail.com. And of course, that is Sin spelled with 2 N's. And we love getting your questions in, so can't wait to hear from you. Ella, it has been and always is such a pleasure. Can you please tell the listeners where they can find your stuff?
Yes. So if you go to eladarling.com, that's ELA darling.com, that'll take you to probably OnlyFans, actually. I don't know. Go to my Twitter and you'll find Linktree. I'm at Ela Darling pretty much everywhere. Just my OnlyFans is free to sign up, and I post stupid Indian blogs and video blogs, and it's fun.
It is eladarling.com. That is your OnlyFans. I just
Yes.
typed it in, so I checked.
Yes, perfect. So, yeah, catch me Monday nights. I stream on Twitch with my friends. We play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's really fun. I play a satyr bard named Pepsi Maxton.
I saw that today. That's so cute.
Yeah, she plays pan flute. She's in a little band that only plays pan flutes, and they're called the Only Pans.
Oh my gosh. So clever.
Yeah. So that's fun. But yeah, elladarling.com will take you to OnlyFans, and that's where the cool shit happens anyway. That's where you see my tits.
Very true. I've seen them.
Oh, first you know them biblically, darling.
Absolutely. And of course on Twitter you can find all Ella's things as well, and you can find her link tree and all that stuff.
Yes.
So please go and patronize her and enjoy all of her awesome things that she does. And thank you again so very much for being on my little podcast. I hope it was fun.
It was so much fun. Thank you for having me, darling. I love you so much.
I love you so much too. And thank you everyone for listening. And I hope you tune in next time for even more fun sexual stuff.